In two of the really large eruptions at Yellowstone, so much material comes out, entire mountain ranges end up falling into the ground and essentially disappearing.
This restless Yellowstone caldera is truly living, breathing, and every once in a while it burps.
Incoming reports from the Yellowstone Park Ranger have it that heated molten magma is steadily brewing under the park grounds, which could lead to a terrible volcanic eruption that hurls volcanic ash in every direction of the United States. Not only could this reduce buildings to rubble, sniff life out of plants, and wipe out wild animals, but a team of scientists has also discovered that the supervolcano has the capacity to bury 4 states in the U.S., like Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and Colorado, 3 feet under a pile of toxic volcanic ash, according to a paper published on Geophysics, Geosystems, and Geochemistry around September 2014. This is not the first time a volcano is breaking out in Yellowstone. One super eruption first occurred 2.1 million years ago. Another took place 1.3 million years ago, and the last one happened 631,000 years ago. Now, it seems the volcanic magma in Yellowstone is about to erupt again in our lifetime. Is this why Yellowstone Park was closed down recently? Join us as we discuss the looming supervolcano that's about to erupt inside Yellowstone National Park. Something really chilly, or should we say boiling hot, happened inside Yellowstone Park. Yellowstone isn't your regular national park where you come to admire the serenity of nature and wildlife. Far from it. That's not the main reason people go there. Revered as the world's first national park in 1872, Yellowstone has always been a historic fascination because of the large post-volcanic dents on the ground that were formed in the national park from super eruptions that happened at different times in the past. And also, because of the hot geysers and springs that are powered by the boiling magma cooking below the grounds of Yellowstone. To be honest, almost 3 million yearly visitors go there to watch for signs of a volcanic blast ever happening again. Now, something unbelievable has happened, which led to the closing of the national park. So, what really happened inside Yellowstone? Signs of a volcanic uplift were spotted inside the grounds of the national park, as a fiery magma activity 5 miles below the ground surface caused the park grounds to rise up by about 25 centimeters, which is 10 inches. The significant swell of the ground obviously tells a worrisome tale of a raging magma welling up under the ground that's being fed by repeated sprays of molten rock. The ground didn't stay raised up forever. Scientists kept tabs on the state of volcanic activity and how close the magma chamber was to erupting by monitoring how high or low the grounds were per time. So, it came as a big relief when the elevated ground at Yellowstone began to fall and flatten because it meant that the magma went back up to the chamber, undergoing cooling and hardening. Threats of burning lava gushing out from the volcano have been put to rest for now, but it doesn't take away the remote possibility of Yellowstone Park being engulfed in a catastrophic eruption, since every now and then there have been sights of uplift as the grounds of Yellowstone rises and falls due to the ongoing magma activity beneath it. Yellowstone has been buried under volcanic eruptions at different times in history, and if it has happened before, what stops it from happening again before our very eyes? Past supervolcanic eruptions at Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone isn't new to supervolcanoes that have distorted and reshaped the terrain of the national park over the years. These supervolcanoes are way more severe and bigger in magnitude than the regular volcanic quakes experienced from time to time at Yellowstone. It is said that if one of those happens again, a city could be covered 5 feet deep in molten magma. Subsequently, it's only normal that these super eruptions are naturally spaced out, happening far and in between thousands of years to ensure that the Earth and human race survive and march on in evolution. The first supervolcano that rocked Yellowstone was the Huckleberry Ridge tuff eruption, which occurred 2.1 million years ago. It is ranked among one of the biggest eruptions in the history of Yellowstone National Park. It is said to have forcefully expelled more than 240 cubic miles of lava, molten magma, and other underground materials. So wide was the reach of this eruption that it spread 1,000 cubic kilometers round about the volcanic gusher. Looking back at the event in awe, scientists admitted that the Huckleberry Ridge tuff eruption ejected over twice the amount of magma, lava, and volcanic material that the third supervolcano, Lava Creek, would later do. The eruption would eventually cool off to form the third largest caldera at Yellowstone Park. Caldera are huge bowl-shaped cavities in the ground formed as a result of volcanic eruptions. On-site analysis of the Huckleberry Ridge tuff eruption later discovered that, contrary to how people imagined it to be as one massive torrent of volcanic eruption, the volcanic blast actually happened in 3 separate phases that were unevenly spaced out. The space between the first 2 eruptions lasted anywhere from a couple of weeks to a few months. After the second eruption, it would take decades before the third and final eruption finally took place. What's left of the Huckleberry Ridge tuff at present are the separate layers of ash flows found at Yellowstone. To show you how high and disastrous the eruption was to the surrounding environs, the ash flows left of the Huckleberry Ridge tuff eruption have now cooled and solidified as huge cliffs located around Yellowstone Park. That means that at the time of the eruption, the volcanic materials flowed through the ground as high as a cliff, covering buildings and all that was in its way in merciless molten destruction. Imagine if a human was present at the scene of the eruption. Though much of the cliff has been eroded and washed away by natural wear and tear, the initial volume of the Huckleberry Ridge tuff is stated to be 3,000 cubic kilometers. Mesa Falls eruption is the second volcano that happened at Yellowstone Park more than 1 million years after the Huckleberry Ridge tuff ended. The Mesa Falls actually took place 1.3 million years ago and is the supervolcano with the least impact and magnitude of the 3 major eruptions that plagued Yellowstone National Park. It's not considered a supervolcano since it only erupted as much as 67 cubic meters or 280 cubic kilometers of volcanic ash, molten, magma, lava, and other harmful materials. Though it seems small compared to the first supervolcano, it is still 10 times larger than the 1980 volcanic eruption that took place at Mount St. Helens. Coming in as the last supervolcano, Lava Creek is a super eruption that wrecked Yellowstone National Park 631,000 years back. Similar to the first Huckleberry Ridge tuff eruption, it blasted out volcanic ash and lava more than 240 cubic miles or 1,000 cubic kilometers. The Lava Creek served as the climax of the volcanic cycle at Yellowstone as its emissions violently burst open and covered most parts of the west-central United States. Studies have revealed that the Lava Creek didn't happen out of nowhere. At least, clues found in the Sour Creek Dome area of Yellowstone led scientists to believe that one volcanic eruption ushered in the destruction of the Lava Creek. It was possible to know this because molten rock discovered through the boiling mix of volcanic materials that gushed out through the eruption, called ignimbrite, was found to be already cool before the main Lava Creek eruption started. There were 2 units of ignimbrite found, Unit 1 and Unit 2. Upon close analysis, it was discovered that Unit 1 cooled a long time before Unit 2. And since the cooling time of a big ignimbrite is ridiculously long, it is only logical to speculate that there was a break in the decades of Lava Creek flowing. Scientists are beginning to think that there could be more units besides the 2 ignimbrite units. From all indications, it seemed that Lava Creek followed the explosion pattern of the Huckleberry Ridge tuff by spreading out its eruptions into 2 or more sequences. The thickness of the volcanic ash that flowed out of Lava Creek was reported to be as high and thick as 660 feet. Over the years, it is likely to have been compressed because of overweight sediment. In that case, it is postulated that the height of Lava Creek's volcanic ash would be taller than the skyscrapers we see in today's world. To date, it is recorded that there have been no eruptions close to what was experienced at Lava Creek tuff. Lava Creek tuff is adorned in unique colors, ranging from pale red to light gray with a solid tuff layer. The tuff is so dense, and its composition ranges from aphanitic to smooth, fine-grained textures. The spread of the lava creek's eruption was so wide that it covered a surface area of 2,900 square meters. How the Yellowstone eruption would look like when it happens. Yellowstone's volcanic tendencies have been regarded since time immemorial as a ticking time bomb waiting to go off when the circumstance hits just right, like a sleeping giant holding the potential of massive catastrophe in its womb. It stirs on occasions as it threatens to wake up from the last great sleep it went into 100,000 years ago at Lava Creek. Around 1,000 to 3,000 earthquakes take place annually at Yellowstone, yet none of them can be compared to one of the 3 major eruptions that have ransacked the national park, since those earthquakes even go unnoticed sometimes. Having said that, wouldn't you want to have witnessed what one of these super eruptions looked like? For example, the Lava Creek. Assuming you were wrapped in a safe gear to see how the supervolcano unfolds, I bet you would do anything to experience it. The good news is, I can simply describe how it would look like for you, so you won't have to endanger yourself trying to see it firsthand. If the next Yellowstone super eruption were to take place in our lifetime, it would start by first melting the molten rock, because of the great heat coming from the belly of the planet. After that, there would be a series of tremors and earthquakes, signaling the fact that the molten magma underneath the Earth's surface is about to burst open. The earthquakes could last for weeks and months as they surely but slowly break up the Earth's crust for the toxic gases, lava, and molten rock to violently flow out. Meanwhile, as the ground is threatening to split open, mixtures of volcanic materials will harmonize and get mixed just under the Earth's surface, waiting for their bloodthirsty debut in the Earth's atmosphere. The materials getting mixed would be volcanic ash, molten rocks, magma, inconceivable gases, carbon dioxide, and steaming vapor. They would steam together until they form a powerful mixture capable of annihilating every earthly creature that stands in their path. Over the next couple of months, the mix would keep heating up to unbelievable boiling levels until it starts pushing up the ground beneath into a dome shape, and then make cracks by the edges for hot gases that have been dissolved to shoot out in all directions at Yellowstone Park. Exploding gases would cause the molten magma to erupt so suddenly and dangerously that it'll spread throughout the national park, which can have an unpleasant effect on people. A shot of volcanic ash, hot air, and problematic gases will be violently dispersed thousands of meters into the air and landing in all areas at Yellowstone Park, making it virtually inhabitable for animals and people. The most dangerous thing is that the molten eruption would cause lava to flow out that stands at 3 meters or 10 feet tall. The molten lava and ash could flow as wide as 1,609 kilometers and have a devastating effect on over 90,000 of the population in a short time. At this time, rescuers would be forced to come to the scene, but they'll be unable to establish a point of contact with the victims because of the spread of molten ash all over the ground. Aerial rescue involving planes and helicopters would not be possible because of the harmful black gases that would have saturated the air completely, making flight travel dangerous. Even a regular little volcanic eruption could interrupt air travel, not to mention a super eruption with the likes of Lava Creek. The United States would witness a long period of living in a place with the worst air quality in the world. Toxic gases would envelop the atmosphere in a dark haze that's capable of blocking the rays of sunlight from the cities. The aftermath of the supervolcanic eruption would see the major cities in the U.S. buried 3 feet below the feet of ash. The most affected cities whose vegetation won't see sunlight again for a while would be Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Idaho, and Colorado. Due to the almost extinct plants and forests that cannot stand against molten ash and lava, the nation would be thrown into a hungry famine because the tiniest bit of molten magma would utterly destroy farm produce, shut down air travel, and even cause chronic respiratory problems for residents of North America because they'll all be inhaling toxic gases that came straight out of the belly of the Earth. But really, what are the chances of a supervolcano happening right now at Yellowstone? Since Yellowstone last had a super eruption 631,000 years ago, the chances of it happening right now are very low. At the moment, there's no sign that a volcanic outburst would shake the continent. Though the ground will continue to experience rise and fall because of the magma activity underneath it, it's safe to believe that there's nothing out of the ordinary going on. All will be well as usual. As a matter of fact, the United States Geological Survey took its time to come up with a probability for Yellowstone National Park to experience another round of supervolcanic eruption. Guess the probability of it happening again? You wouldn't believe it. The probability of a super eruption happening again was just 0.00014%. The department also didn't fail to let the general public know that the volcanic activity in Yellowstone isn't different from the way it has been in the last 140 years. In other words, the chances of a supervolcano are way lower than getting hit by an asteroid capable of laying waste to an entire continent. Besides, there is no theory that states that volcanoes don't die out because the magma chamber in Yellowstone's volcano is battling with two forces at the polar ends. One is toxic, boiling heat erupting from beneath the earth, and the other is the opposing cold on the ground's surface that never fails to impose its will on the molten magma. The molten chamber runs the risk of freezing if the heat from under becomes lower than the cold from the top. When that happens, the magma would freeze and solidify into a granite. Now that you know what happened inside Yellowstone National Park, subscribe to our channel and watch the next video that pops up on your screen.